Hello and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. I am Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. That is my dog Bronco in the background. I can't quite shut him up enough even with food. I will do what I can, but nonetheless, we are live on this Wednesday on the Wild Wild West podcast. Oh, he go nuts for that. That's great. Thank you, Captain. I appreciate it. So we're live this Wednesday. To my left on screen, for those of you joining us live, and which, by the way, we appreciate each and every one of you, is Captain Jack from the Captain Jack Rackham podcast. Directly below, sorry, that way, is Alex Gibbons. You can catch his articles on Arrowhead Addict. He's also a lifelong Chiefs fan, happens to live in the area too. Going to give his feedback. And you may notice we are down a fourth. We have a few issues this week. One, Bolt Bros normally love to come in and join us to provide their Chargers feedback. Today happens to be their parents' 50th wedding anniversary. That's amazing. I mean, look, I don't care who you are. I don't care which fan of which team you're on. We should be reaching out to the Bolt Bros and giving them and their family an absolute 2 thumbs up. That is amazing. You don't get that kind of stuff very often. I love to see that kind of stuff happen. That's fantastic and spectacular. So let's give a shout out to the Bolt Bros. And of course, our standing fourth co-host on the show, Coach Defense, has ran into some really difficult and challenging times in the last week. He had his identity and wallet and other things stolen, sadly. We'd like to just give him a quick shout out. Make sure he feels the love from the Wild Wild West podcast. Give him a bear hug as best you can. Good luck with that one too. And we'll go from there. But Coach, in our thoughts and prayers, I really hope that things work out for you and everything goes as planned and that no one did anything nefarious with what they were able to take there. And again, just I hope all is well.
Yeah, I tell you what, there's probably some damn Raider fan. Oh, sorry, never mind.
Well, in fairness, Captain, you call everyone else a fake pirate, so that's fair. That's fair.
Probably, like I said, it's probably a fake pirate because remember he lives out in like Virginia, Carolina, somewhere. So it's probably a damn fake pirate fan, not a true pirate. But in all seriousness, Coach, and again, the bishop says praying for you. All of the real folks that love you are thinking kind thoughts, considerations, and the best to you so that whatever happens, you can bounce back quickly on that one, partner.
I agree. I hope they catch him. I hope he gets prosecuted. I would love to see jail time. I'm a huge proponent of that, especially for people I actually like. I love to see, folks that do something wrong to folks I like to, legitimately pay. And I really hope that, justice is done in terms of what's happened there. My whole family's police officers and cops. So I'm a huge proponent of legal justice in that regard. And that kind of stuff has no place in our society. People need to pay for those wrongdoing. So I really do hope that, nothing bad happens and that your stuff is recovered and that the person that did it pays for their crimes. But
and also, I'm for legal justice too. But I know a guy. I got a guy, and I'm not going to say his name, but
we're on a stream here. I don't know if you want to put that on video.
We'll call him Carmine. Okay, I know a guy.
And we take him out for some gabagool.
So let's just say that your friend measures his trunks by the number of bodies it fits, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Big old Cadillacs.
So the Cadillacs are a 5-body trunk for those who care to know.
They find them, little gabagool.
We'll go from there.
Little dip in the ocean, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, fell off the effing truck. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Look, he put those concrete boots on himself. Okay,
hey, man.
I didn't do it for him. He did it himself. Anyways, guys, aside from those that like to swim with the fishies, we are here to talk football and the AFC West. We have some interesting show for you tonight. We want to go over a whole lot of more of kind of what's to come for our teams on today's show. More of a look ahead, a bit of a positive leap forward based on where we're all at now. Alex, I think the Chiefs are in a very, very interesting position for today's topics. For those of you who are joining the show, we do want to go over the sophomore players. You're going to have to forgive me. In Canada, we don't use sophomore here. So I think that's second year, if I remember my American correct.
Yeah. I don't think I say sophomore either, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're
so
getting that.
I'm legit doing a Canadian to American, conversion there. So sophomore players, your second year players, I think the Chiefs are really going to be leaning on guys to make massive leaps forward in that year 1 to year 2 role. I think you need to look no further than your secondary guys. But I'm not trying to steal your thunder, Alex. Interesting in terms of your thoughts on that. Who you think can step in, who you think you need to step in. And then maybe an under the radar guy who you're like, hey, you guys don't know who this guy is, but I do. Look out for this guy.
Yeah. I mean, obviously with the kind of, I guess, ever evolving offseason narrative with the Chiefs is, seem to be losing some major contributor and trying to, replug that production with 1 to 2 younger guys. And that's, not going to be any different this offseason going into this year. There was 2 that I really identified as, outside of the second year players that already were pretty key contributors last year, like your Karlaftis, your Josiah Williams, your Jalen Watsons, those rookie corners that actually ended up having to produce a lot at Pacheco. So, I mean, those guys were already involved in, I mean, obviously looking to build on what they did, and you hope that they come in with the same success they had last year. But in terms of people that didn't really contribute last year are certainly going to be given more of a responsibility this year. On the offensive side of the ball, biggest one that came to mind for me was Sky Moore. Yep. He's a receiver, drafted last year, second round pick, kind of was in and out of the doghouse, and also ended up in a receiving room that kind of had too many mouths to feed. So, he couldn't ever really work his way into meaningful targets. But, saw some uptick in usage and, I guess, overall trust in giving him the ball in pretty key moments in the playoffs, which to me was a pretty big indicator that they're going to plan to use him more, on top of the fact that, they lost Juju and didn't seem to make a huge effort to ensure that they, had a solidified number 1 guy. So, I mean, you look at those things and he's poised to get more opportunities and produce more. And I mean, he was a second round pick, that, I mean, was kind of a bona fide slot machine, on the inside. So I think that's just the perfect type of receiver that Mahomes can use to move the ball, down the field and have long sustained drives. So that's kind of the offensive guy who didn't really produce. I think between him and Rashid Rice, the other rookie they drafted, I mean, one of them's got to step up big time. But just given kind of how Andy Reid's offense, I guess, is, seen as hard and complex. And everyone always says, rookies don't usually work their way into that offense very easily their first year. I could see Sky Moore being the one who has the better chance to break out. And then in terms of defense, you did kind of allude to this, Richie, but maybe not fully. But the player on the defensive side that I would say is the most set to break out or is going to need to would be Brian Cook, who is a safety that they took last year as well out of Cincinnati. And, he wasn't really expected to do much. He was kind of a rotational player because they had Thornhill and Justin Reed. Juan Thornhill obviously left this offseason, signed a pretty big deal with Cleveland. So, you know that they're going to bring, give Brian Cook kind of the keys to the Cadillac here and see if he loses them. Because, outside of that, they signed Mike Edwards, kind of a veteran journeyman safety from the other Pirates in Tampa Bay. So, so obviously don't have, you didn't make it a big effort to make sure that they brought someone else in at safety. So, Brian Cook, I think, is going to have to step up. And from what you saw with him last year, I think he could, because he's, your prototypical ball hawking type safety that can make plays. So I'd be excited to see what he can do given the full starting opportunity.
I'm super interested in there's the sophomore slump that you always hear about, right? In terms of, these players and just general positions and all that kind of stuff. And what I think makes KC so interesting this year is totally different than what we were, really, zoned in on last year, which is you lose Tyreek Hill, was literally he's like a 7th-year player that was just still a burner. He was ridiculous. He's still right.
Good.
He's still good even now, right? But what you guys have right now is you're a better blended team this year coming into the season. You show that you can do kind of the pass and the run with Pacheco and your current wide receivers and new wide receivers probably even on the roster now. But what's really going to be interesting is what you guys benefited from, particularly in postseason, is your secondary rookies stepped up and played as if they were NFL starters. So what I really want to hear from you, Alex, if I'm going to be perfectly honest here, is I expect your offense to still be halfway decent. You have Mahomes and you have some other guys. You're good. But what about your defense? Do you think that those second-year players are going to start feeling the weight and then maybe not step up? Or do you think that they're going to be able to overcome what is traditionally a hurdle for most guys? Not even, by the way, it is most guys. Like this is not just like hearsay. This is a legit thing.
No, I see.
Yeah, like this is a legit thing. Like there's a statistical curve that shows that even rookies that show out in their rookie year typically dip in their second year. What do you think?
Yeah, so obviously that is a concern with any team and any player that has a remotely successful rookie year. The one thing I would say with those guys is, they had to step up in situations when you had like Trent McDuffie, the first round corner they took, was out for the first, I think, 7 weeks of the year, 7 or 8 weeks. And you had Snead, you had Snead go down as well. So it was more of those guys became good having to be thrown in because there wasn't any other option. So I think the biggest difference between last season and this season is, at least at the start of the year, you're going to have your full healthy secondary. So I don't think that they're going to have to necessarily be taking on the same roles that they had to for most of last year, because you're going to have Snead back. You're going to have McDuffie, who was already looking like a solidified corner, and will be there for a full season and hopefully do the same. I'd say the biggest concern, and I think that what would be the biggest potential to impact the success the secondary had is if they lose out on their pass rush, because obviously they were the second highest pass rush team, in terms of sacks behind the Eagles, who had like a shitload. But but losing Frank Clark and relying more on Karlaftis and still relying on Chris Jones and not really getting a number, a 1B piece to the edge rush, I think could be
or
sort
interior.
of the and
or
I think that could be kind of the cog to ruin the success of the defense, because if they're not getting into the backfield, then you can only cover someone for so long, and that will kind of greater impact the success of the secondary had this last year. Because we got a team that's getting 55 sacks. Like you're kind of loving life, because that teams are planning to get the ball out quick. Quarterbacks know, if I got this for more than 3 seconds, I'm getting hit. So I think if you
basically have a secondary at that, you have a secondary at that point that's basically saying, this is amazing.
Yeah, like
yeah,
any teams. I mean, if any of our teams, if both of our, our pass rushing works out on paper, right? Like if Crosby and Chandler Jones are just tearing it up, like I mean, no, your secondary, you don't need anybody back there. Like you just have some guys that don't really know what they're doing as long as they can shadow a receiver, and you're gonna hold teams pretty well. But I think that'd be more of the biggest thing that could kind of make it all fall apart in terms of their defensive success. But I mean, I say that kind of loosely because they weren't really overly successful from a defensive standpoint, last year, and just were able to outscore everyone. So kind of hope that the blueprint and the plan still is in place for that.
Charger Chris, DZ, and any other Chargers fans that have joined us today. No, I'm not going to unload on this comment. I'm not.
I will.
I'm sure you will. But I am, with the absence of captain and my limited knowledge on your sophomore players, I would love to get some comments from all those Chargers fans that are joining us tonight. I would love to pull up and start discussing, even if it's in the chat only, and we can start bringing up the guys that you bring up, and I can actually, throw them up on my second and third screen here. Love to know guys you think are going to spark in their second year, and rookies.
And your rookies, the guys that you picked up this year too.
And the rookies that you think you guys picked up in the draft that are going to show up in year one. Basically, those guys that you think are going to be key contributors. So let's get those names. Let's get those stats. Let's get those comments. We are seeking your feedback to round out the Chargers element of the show. And I will be working on bringing in another Chargers guy to fill in for Cap next week. It was just a little late notice this week to kind of get a backup to get in here. But let's get the Chargers fans to jump in here and give us some feedback in terms of their team. And,
I can do it. We need to.
Captain
Chase Daniel.
Yeah, Captain, you do your thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, because Chris wants me to unload. I won't, Chris. I won't. This is not mean.
Sounds dirty, man.
This is not mean, okay? But you said 3 Super Bowls, partner. I will be in the ground. I will be in the ground by the time you get 3. I might be in the ground before you even get your first. Okay, that's all I'm saying. 3. Shoot, Alex might be dead before you get the 3.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's all I'm going to say, because I seem to recall a quarterback that's in the Hall of Fame that was the Chargers quarterback forever, that I can't stand listening to him whenever I have to hear a broadcast. And he had a grand total of 0. So if that comment is solely, and I will say solely based on Herbert, you don't got a leg to stand
Herbert
on.
hasn't even won a playoff game yet.
Right. And the other thing is, there was a quarterback
actually he lost in record-setting fashion.
That is one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the NFL that went to 1 Super Bowl early on in his career and never made it back. And that guy's name was Marino. So what I'm saying is, if your comment is based solely on Justin Herbert, you might be smoking something.
And have you heard Marino speak about that? Because
I've heard Marino speak a couple different things. He
That's
went
the guy
the
in
first time. He said,
Ventura
"Hey,
movie, right?
this is easy. We'll be here."
No,
every year." And he never did, right?
No. But have you heard Marino speak about his first trip to the Super Bowl as an elderly or older, like with hindsight, like when he was a young guy, he just said, like, I'm going to get back there again. Who cares, right? But have you heard him speak kind of as the elder statesman that he is now, looking back at his NFL career and kind of speaking to his Super Bowl appearance and not, we'll call it respecting it? I actually think that that's an appropriate word, because he was really, really candid in one of his recent interviews when he was, I mean, this was probably 10 years ago, but still, like, he's well past his NFL playing days at this point. And he was very, very candid in speaking to his Super Bowl appearances, saying, I didn't treat it properly. I didn't give it the
Respect.
due. I didn't give it the respect. I didn't give it the pedestal. I didn't give it the elusiveness that it deserved. I just looked at myself as being so darn good that I was going to get back there again. Who cares?
Right. And that's what I was saying. When he was younger, as I've heard this, he went to the Super Bowl his second year. Okay. And he had all those records in that year. And, he thought, well, okay, so we didn't win it this year, but that's okay. We'll be back, again next year and the year after and all that thing like that, because it's as Richie was alluding to, it takes a lot, the entire team, to make sure that you get there.
It does. It does. And Jack, Coach has come on some difficult times. He's had some issues with potential identity theft and things of that nature. So please, reach out to him, wish him his best. Hopefully he is in good standing. That kind of stuff is no joke. I thankfully have some personal additional protections because of my background. That kind of stuff is less of an impact on me. But for other folks, that is a legit issue, something that needs to be sorted and can be very, very detrimental. So let's all reach out to Coach, let him know that we're thinking of him, and hopefully he's back sooner rather than later. And right after we're going over the Chiefs here, which I truly think that this is an important topic, guys. Like, we're talking the AFC West. At this point here, until proven otherwise, the Chiefs are atop the division, right? Like, I don't care. You could be a Chargers fan, a Raiders fan, or a Broncos fan, or a Chiefs fan. But if we're going to look at the hierarchical structure, the Chiefs are atop that division. And we really need to they are. Like, they just are. It's just a fact. So until they are basically knocked down a peg, they are atop the division. And we need to start seeing the rest of our division playing up to par so that we can start having a competitive division again. We all seem to play competitively against each other, but the Chiefs, generally speaking, have been able to come on top of most of us for, a good number of
7 years.
Yeah, and we need.
Damn it! You're getting my line, man. I'm setting myself up.
7 years.
7 years.
Basically, the Broncos
record.
were the last dominant team in the division before the Chiefs. We were. Like, I'm sorry, like, it's just, that's a fact. Like, that's not me saying, hey, I'm wearing orange. That's just me being honest. Like, the Broncos were the last dominant team in the division, and then and then it got inverted. Mahomes came into the league, Manning left the league, and the Broncos never backfilled properly, and the rest of the division never caught up. And so now we have the Chiefs that have really run away with things, and now it's up to us, the collective us, to step up.
The Royal We. So, yeah, 7 years in a row, which is the record of consecutive AFC West titles. Most likely it'll be 8.
Yep. Yep.
Knocking on wood there, man.
Yep. So,
to be fair, I'm pretty sure Alex Smith won a couple of those. Let's give the man his credit. But
Alex Smith was good, but he was really riding off of Andy Reid's scheming for him. And
yeah.
Yeah. Like let's just call a duck a duck. Like that
Well,
was
yeah,
not.
I mean, Mahomes is like literally the epitome of like one player can change the whole thing, you know, or like
Yeah.
Alex Smith was a good QB, but he couldn't push the ball downfield.
No.
And, you know, you always knew he was going to check down. Like, you know, he's basically like the University of Iowa offense. It's 3rd and 10. He's going to check it down to the or the running back and hope he gets there. Mahomes is like going to throw it 40 yards and hope he gets a touchdown. You know?
Well, in fairness, Mahomes in his early career spun left, ran right, ducked under,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then, basically bounced it off his ass and then down the field 50 yards. You know what I mean? Like that was the Mahomes move, right? Like that was his
a
deal.
left-handed.
Yeah. And so
you know about that one.
Yeah, I do. Thanks. So I actually agree with you, Alex. I think that a lot of your sophomore guys are your secondary, and that's why I brought it up. Like that was literally why I led in with that to kind of throw over to you. Was I truly believe that your success this year relies on your secondary. We're going to bring in Tom Jones, who's going to join us just as a special guest today. Just thank you, Tom, for joining us.
Big cat to sing his little intro song for him.
And I
think unusual to be joined by Tom Jones.
There's Captain Jack. There we go.
It is.
in fairness, he spells it different.
And also, in fairness, I'm actually the real Tom Jones, because the other guy, that's not even his real name.
This is true. But Tom, we've been talking about the Chiefs, and I think it's a fair statement. And I would hazard a guess that as an objective fan, as you are, the Chiefs are the team to beat.
No, right? Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, they are.
I'm not going to discount that one bit. Now, I went through and I looked at the entire schedule, and I looked at all 4 teams, and I took into account schedule, team trends, looked at free agency, looked at the draft, and looked at the cyclical history of the league and each team. So what I've come up with is what I think is again, this could be totally off base, but I went down week by week, and I'm going to give you the schedules, going to give you the results of the division by each team. And I'm going to start with Kansas City. As we mentioned, as Ric Flair used to always say in World Championship Wrestling, to be the man. Jack, remember the rest of it?
No, I'll be honest. I didn't watch a lot of wrestling back then, Punter. But I would say, to be the man, you got to beat the man.
To be the man, you've got to beat the man. That's right.
I was right.
Okay, you were right. You're right.
Here, hold on, Tom. Just give me a second. In order to be the man, you've got to beat the man.
There we go.
There you go.
All right, so here we go. So leading off with the Chiefs are going to stumble coming out of the blocks. I looked at traditionally they do this, not every year, but I see them losing their first 2 games, losing at home to the Lions on national TV, and then losing to the Jaguars to go to 0-2. Then they bounce back with wins over the Bears, and then they beat the Jets on the road to go to 2-2.
No way.
And yeah.
No.
And then they win again, beating the Vikings on the road to go to 3-2. So they lose their first 2, then they win their next 3. They lose in week 6 at home versus the Denver Broncos. I have them losing at home, and then they go to 3-3. But then they turn right around and they beat the Chargers at home to go to 4-3. This is where they go on a little bit of a run. So in week 8, they beat the Broncos to go to a 5-3 record. In week 9, they beat the Dolphins to go to 6-3. Then they have the bye week. As you know, traditionally, Andy Reid does not lose coming out of a bye week. So they've got the Chiefs coming out of the bye, or excuse me, they've got the Eagles coming out of the bye. And that's at home. I see them winning that one to go to 7-3. Then they win again the next week against the Raiders to go to 8-3. And then they finish out their win streak with another win over the Packers to go to 9-3. So after 12 games, they have a 9-3 record. They lose to the Bills at home. They go to 9-4. Then they beat the Patriots to go 10-4. They win again against the Raiders. So they sweep the Raiders, going to 11-4. Then, and what I think is going to be the either the number 1 or number 2 seed matchup against the Bengals. They win at home against the Bengals to go to 12-4. And then that puts them in the last game against the Chargers. So they lose that game simply because at that point they will have wrapped up everything and they're going to rest everybody. So the Chargers are actually going to get that win. So the Chiefs finish at 12-5 and they win the division and sew up either a number 1 or number 2 seed. So, and again, that's me looking at it.
I'd agree with that.
Okay, now I'm going to go with the Raiders.
I don't think they're gonna lose the Broncos because the last time that happened, I think I was in like 7th grade.
Well, like I said, cyclical history is in play here. So things, and again, it may not happen.
You're 14, Alex.
I'm looking at my crystal ball. So
2004. I mean, that's still almost 10 years ago.
All right, let's look at the Raiders next. Now, this probably will not surprise you when I talk about the results, because again, I'm looking at this objectively, not through my black and silver or silver and black colored glasses here. I do see the Raiders beating Denver on the road in week 1. So they've owned the Broncos of late. I think that the Raiders will come out of the gates strong early. In week 1, and they'll beat Denver in week 1 to go to 1-0.
See, I disagree with that.
Okay.
And I actually, and here's my reasoning, and this is, I actually want to hear your take on this.
Okay.
I think that what you're dealing with this season is an offensive-minded head coach, and I believe that he will scheme offensively things that the Raiders have not had to defend against before. Now, where I actually have the inverse happening, and I don't know where your schedule is going here for the Raiders, I have it inverted. I think the Broncos win the first game against the Raiders, but lose the second. And like, as in, we beat you on the road, but then we lose to you at home, because I think that
I got it inverted. I got us beating the Broncos in Denver, because they will not have had a chance to gel with that wonderfulness that is Sean Payton. But by the second time, which is the end game, which is the very last game in Vegas, Vegas loses to the Broncos in the very last game, because by that time you've had 17 weeks to gel, and you beat the Raiders in Vegas, which will be the first time you beat the Raiders.
I can see that happening, but my point is that I think that when you're dealing with professional football players, especially guys at this level, the guys that have progressed have been the best of the best. Even these young dudes that are in their like early 20s, they know exactly who Sean Payton is. There is no, I don't know if he can coach, aura around a Sean Payton. There is that dude's a Hall of Fame coach. Like full stop, we're done. No, you may not agree with it, but the young guys, like the 20-somethings, grew up with the Saints being a dominant force of the NFL in their mid and early childhood careers, which are formative years for those guys. And so they recognize that Sean Payton is a legitimate head coach. They're going to respect him. They're going to shut up and listen, and they're going to do the right things. And I actually think that what's going to happen is that McDaniels is going to pivot, and he's going to adjust to the Broncos scheme, and the defensive coordinator for the Raiders is going to adjust accordingly as well. That's my take, and I actually believe that Payton will scheme for the Raiders, because unlike most head coaches, he respects history of the NFL. He has a football IQ that is above 0. And he understands that you play your divisional opponents a certain way, and you need to foster that within your team.
Well, you may have something there, but now having said that, let me go through the schedules, because I think when you see everything line up, I think you'll probably more agree than disagree. So let me go through the Raiders first, then I'll go through the Broncos, and then we'll do the Chargers last. So. Yeah. I see the Raiders beating Denver on the road to go to 1-0. Then they turn around and lose to Buffalo on the road to go to 1-1. They come back home and they beat Pittsburgh to go to 2-1. Then they lose to the Chargers on the road to go to 2-2. At that point, they beat the Packers at home to go to 3-2. Then they lose to the Patriots to go to 3-3. So again, we're kind of back and forth here. Then they win consecutive games. They beat Chicago to go to 4-3, and then they beat Detroit to go to 5-3, and then also see them beating the Giants to go to 6-3. So they're actually putting together a 3-game win streak there to go to 6-3. Then I think the wheels start to kind of come off a little bit, whether it's through injury or just what the Raiders traditionally do, where they kind of weaken toward the second half of the season. I see them losing to the Jets in Week 10. That drops them to 6-4. Then I see them losing again to Miami to drop to 6-5. And then they lose to the Chiefs to drop to 6-6. So when they go into their bye week at Week 13, they're 6-6. Now they're still in playoff contention, but it's pretty weak. And Week 14, coming out of the bye, they beat Minnesota to go to 7-6, and then they beat the Chargers to go to 8-6. Then they lose consecutive games to Kansas City to drop to 8-7, and then they lose at the Colts to go to 8-8. Now, I'm going to stop it right there and then go to the Broncos, and you'll see why in just a moment. So at the Week 17 mark, the Raiders are 8-8. Now let's go to the Broncos. Now, as I already mentioned, the Broncos lose to the Raiders at home, going to 0-1. Then they win at home versus Washington in Week 2 to go to 1-1. Then they lose at the Dolphins to drop to 1-2. They even their record the next week by winning at Chicago to go to 2-2. Then they lose at home versus the Jets to go to 2-3. And then they even their record with a win against Kansas City in Week 6. I see them going to Kansas City and knocking off the defending world champions in Kansas City to raise their record to 3-3. Then they take that momentum and then they go home and they beat the Packers to go to 4-3. So that gives them a 2-game winning streak. Then they lose at home to the Chiefs. So they play the Chiefs 2 times in 3 weeks. So I think they get the better of the Chiefs the first time, and then the Chiefs come back and beat them the second time. So then they have a 4-4 record going into the bye. Coming out of the bye, they lose at the Bills to go to 4-5. Then they beat the Vikings to go to 5-5. Then they lose at home versus the Browns to go to 5-6. So they're kind of, again, like the Raiders, are kind of back and forth here. Then they win at the Texans to go to 6-6. They win at the Chargers to go to 7-6. Then they win again at the Lions to go to 8-6. Now at this point, they, just like the Raiders, are going to have a little 2-game losing streak here. They're going to lose at home versus the Patriots to go to 8-7, and then they're going to lose that rematch with the Chargers to go to 8-8. Now, the reason why I stopped with the Raiders where I did is I see the Broncos and the Raiders both have 8-8 records, and the winner potentially is going to get a wild card going into the playoffs. Now, let's go to the Chargers. This may be the one that's going to surprise you. Okay, so here we go. Chargers winning at home versus the Dolphins in Week 1 to go to 1-0. Winning against the Titans in Week 2 to go to 2-0. Winning against the Vikings in Week 3 to go to 3-0. And then winning at home versus the Raiders to go to 4-0. So as they go into their bye week in Week 5, I see them at 4-0. And everybody's the hype is going to be just off the chain. It's going to be uncontrollable. Coming out of the bye, they will then lose at home to the Cowboys to drop to 4-1. They'll lose again to the Chiefs, dropping to 4-2. Then they will lose at home to the Bears. This will be an upset. Lose to the Bears to drop to 4-3, and then they will have a 4-game losing streak as they lose to the Jets in Week 9. So you're gonna have a 4-game winning streak and then a 4-game losing streak. So it's going to be a Jekyll and Hyde team. Now,
that's the Chargers season, man. Highs and lows.
At this point, Brandon Staley's really going to be on the hot seat. So we'll see how things happen in transition.
I see that as a 5-3, but I don't think you're far off.
Okay. In week 10, Chargers win at home versus the Lions. They go to 5-4. Then they hit the skids. This is when the wheels completely fall off. Now, whether it's either Herbert getting injured, I don't wish injury on anyone, but whether it's injury, and of course the Chargers have had to battle injuries for years, and they've also had to battle this hype machine where they're built up every year and then they lose. I'm also going to point out the fact that they kind of played over their heads last year, I think, just like the Raiders played over their heads in 2021 and probably had a better record than they should have. This is where I think they take a step back. So in week 11, they have an upset loss to the Packers. The Packers are going to start to kind of figure things out toward the middle to the end of the season. So they lose at the Packers to go to 5-5. They lose again at the Ravens to go to 5-6. They lose to the Patriots to go to 5-7. They lose at home to the Broncos to go to 5-8, and then they lose to the Raiders to go to 5-9. So like at this point, if Staley has not already been fired, he will be. So if he's lasted this long to this point, he won't last any longer than this. I think the Raiders game, if he loses that game like I projected, he'll be done at that point. Now, the season doesn't get any easier because they have Buffalo next, and they lose that game as well to go to 5-10. Now, 5-10 record. I do see the Chargers coming back and winning against the Broncos in that rematch to bring them to 6-10. And then, as I mentioned, I think the Chargers pick up that win in the last week versus the Chiefs. The Chiefs at that point really won't have much to play for, and I see the Chargers picking up that win. So your final records, you have the Chiefs winning the division at 12-5. You have the Raiders and Broncos going into the last week of the season, both at 8-8. And I'm not going to say who's going to win. I would just kind of toss it up in the air and have it a coin flip because it could go either way. So one team is going to finish 9-8, and the other is going to finish 8-9. And then the Chargers bring up the rear at 7-10. And that's how I see it looking in my crystal ball before the season even gets underway. Your comments, your thoughts.
I got no grovels with that, except for maybe losing to Detroit. But I mean, I bet I can see KC having 4 or 5 losses with the schedule they have. And you can't forget, I mean, they lost to the Colts in pretty embarrassing fashion in week 3 this last year, week 2 or 3.
Every NFL team takes at least one on the chin that they don't see coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have the Broncos record at best 9-8.
Okay, well, we agree there then.
I just think that we differ on which games we win and lose, and kind of where we land at different scenarios in the season. I think the Broncos probably end up with the first winning record in franchise history in like almost 7 years. If they don't,
they'll be right there at it.
They're going to be they'll be 8-9 or 9-8. It depends on kind of which end of that kind of volley they land on, I think.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to that last week in the season. I think the Raiders and Broncos really will go into the last week.
Well, actually, and that's where I think we disagree. I think that our biggest question is going to be where we land as it pertains to injuries. Because what the Broncos have done this season is they've gone really weak at certain position groups where we had some additional depth in previous seasons. And if we start dropping guys at those spots, we're done. Like as in 9-8 or 8-9. No, that's more like 4 and something or 3 and something as opposed to coming close to a winning record. Because we don't have like swing tackles, for example. We had Calvin Anderson, who was actually a serviceable swing tackle for us last year. We don't have that option this year. And so I really think that we are in a rough spot when it comes to, where we are at in the 2023 season coming into the season. And I also think that we are in a position where we haven't seen proof that the new strength and conditioning will limit injuries.
Your dog agrees.
I know he does. He agrees 100%.
He's your barking advocate there.
Yeah.
And by the way, Charger fans, like I said, We want to hear what you say your record will be since we don't have Coach with us. And also in the comments, remember the breakout rookies and the breakout second-year players for the Chargers, since we're going to have to do that as well. We got to know, we got DZ and we got Chris in here. So we got at least two of the three Charger fans. Well, actually with Coach, we got all three of the Charger fans that Mark Davis was talking about in his comments the other day.
And I didn't mean, and again, intentionally, I did not mean to throw the Chargers under the bus with what I put together. I just tried to look at everything objectively to see where they would kind of fall. And I thought that this would be the year that the Chargers kind of take a step back after making it to the playoffs. Just like the Raiders did after making it in 2021, they took a step back. Every team does when they sneak into the playoffs one year, they typically have a tendency to move backward.
I agree, and I recognize that Cam Fleming's back, and he is a legit swing tackle for the Broncos. He truly is. But what we had last year is Cam Fleming is our starting right tackle. We have brought in Mike McGlinchey, who is a run blocking right tackle, but he comes from a scheme that doesn't fit with he comes from a scheme that Peyton doesn't typically run. So you brought in a dude that doesn't fit the offensive coordinator, head coach in this particular scenario, that he doesn't do. So you've basically put a guy out of position in a scheme that doesn't make sense. And so I really think that we need to readjust as Broncos fans in terms of, until we get a solidified vision in terms of what our offense is going to look like, and until our head coach and front office can actually get on the same page, you're going to end up with this really weird and wonky looking vision in terms of what the team's going to end up with. And the reason why that's so important is you saw what the benefits of a singular vision look like when Pat Bowlen was there with the Super Bowl 50 team getting put together in the early onset between Super Bowl, the loss for Super Bowl 48 to 50. You saw that vision from the owner being pushed on the team and getting pushed through the finish line. And then you saw once Pat Bowlen left the team with that kind of high-level CEO vision, you saw where the Broncos just dropped off a cliff. Like, I don't care who you are. As a Broncos fan, you have to be objective and look at what we saw on the field. It was not good. We did not have a vision. We did not have an idea of who we were as a team. We didn't own the fact that we ought to be a running team given the altitude that we have the benefit of at 7 or 8 games at home. You have to own what you are, and you have to own where you're at. And the Broncos never did that, and now we are in a disadvantage. We need to do better.
Well, speaking of owning what you are, I think the breakout player for the Broncos this coming year, and I think he's going to continue to progress. He already made a statement last year. Is the defensive lineman Uwazurike. I think he's going to wreak havoc this year. So what the Broncos can't muster in terms of offense, I think they're going to be able to really make up for in defense.
Honestly, if that happens, like, I will be through my roof. like as in, it's an 8-foot ceiling. I'm like 6'2". I will be like, there will be a hole above my podcast studio here. Like, it is like, I will be ecstatic.
For a 4th-round pick, he did kind of the same thing that Max Crosby did when he first came in as a 4th-round pick. And again, I see his progress just totally going up and up. So I think you're going to see him wreak havoc across the lines all season long.
So Wazurike had tremendous potential coming into the league. It's just a matter of, was he not used by the defensive coordinator because he wasn't doing well in practice, or was he not used by the D coordinator because he just had a hard-on for some other guy.
I don't think they just had the glue last year.
Well, you had Jones, right? Like Draymond Jones or whatever.
Well, Draymond Jones is going nowhere. Draymond Jones, Draymond Jones. Well, you mean Draymond Jones?
Yeah, the guy. Didn't you let her interior lineman leave this offseason?
Yeah, he was trash.
Oh, I mean, wasn't he your starter though?
But he was a draft pick of John Elway, and Draymond Jones. Draymond Jones would literally go through entire games and go missing.
As a Raiders fan, I cannot talk about starters who were trash.
I agree, but like the point is that Draymond Jones had like 3 or 4 games where he really showed out, and you have to give credit where credit's due.
DJ,
right?
Okay.
Like Draymond Jones had like 3 or 4 games where he was like an absolute superstar. But the problem is that where were you the last 3 seasons? You can't be a superstar and not be there and show out, year over year over year. You have an Aaron Donald who showed out the interior. You have other guys who have been Vita Vea on the Buccaneers, aka the fake Pirates for the 2 Raiders fans that are on the show. You can't have a guy like that who basically overtakes a Super Bowl and wins it for that team and not say, well, that was the guy, because he was the guy. He was the guy. And Draymond Jones was never that guy for us. He had whole games where he didn't do much or didn't make those impact plays that a guy who's supposed to be fast twitch is capable of making. He got boxed out of plays. Like there's tape that you can go back in certain games where opposing offensive lines would box him out and make him look like an absolute just guy that doesn't know what he's doing. You can't do that. You have to be a guy that wins those.
I think it's going to take Peyton at least a couple of years to get back up to speed. A lot of people thought that Gruden was going to hit the ground running when he came back, and I never thought he would, and I wasn't a fan of that hire when he came back, but it's going to take him a while to get up to speed, and I think it's going to take a while for this Broncos team to gel. And I think if they could finish 8-9 or even 9-8, I think that's progress. And again, you have to. I think every NFL team, and I'll make this statement here, I think every NFL team is capable of winning 6 games. So when you look at it from that standpoint, if you win a close game here or a close game there, then again, all of a sudden that puts you at the threshold of making the playoffs. So I think every NFL team is capable of winning 6. That's the kind of parity we're at now. But I think if the Broncos can finish 8-9 or 9-8, it may not make you all happy, but at least you're moving in the right direction.
Look, you got to find out if Russ isn't cooked.
I agree.
And priority 1.
So I think he's cooked.
There's a bunch of Broncos fans.
I don't see it 8-8.
There's a bunch of Broncos fans in here now, and this is my general comment on Russell Wilson. So oddly enough, this is crazy, but here where I am in Canada, I am one of many Broncos fans. Like, I don't know what it is where I am, but there's probably 50 Broncos fans at least in my area alone.
It's South Park, man. It's South Park.
Yeah.
It's the South Park effect.
So it's fascinating where I am. But when you look at Broncos in general, the problem I have with Russell Wilson is this: if he does well this year under Peyton, when he comes in as the head coach, my issue is this: that means he intentionally played poorly last year. I have a problem with that. I
think he may have already lost the locker room, though. That's the concern I have is that regardless of what Peyton can do to fix him, I think a lot of the collateral damage has already been done.
Well, what my concern is this: Wilson looked much better the last 2 games after Hackett was fired.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And that's an undeniable fact. Like, you just have to look at those games and you're like, dude, that's a different player, right? But what my problem is if that's a fact, then that means he's not a professional. That means he's a diva.
Well, yeah, we already know that,
right? Like, so, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, like, look, I'm thankful Sierra is in the stands.
Now, as a Raiders fan, I can tell you, I saw the digression of Derek Carr over the course of the year, and I saw the digression in skill set. He just is not the quarterback that he was before. See the same thing with Russell Wilson. Doesn't mean that it doesn't take away from anything he's done in the past, but the diminishing skill set is there. I don't think it's going to be recoverable to the point where we first saw it. For the first couple of years in Seattle.
I disagree.
Okay.
And here's why. Your offensive scheme last year did not leverage Renfro either. So, and what I mean by that is you saw Gruden leverage a slot receiver that you had in Renfro who was elite at the NFL level. I'm sorry, it's just a fact. Renfro is a legit slot receiver, middle of the field, cleanup guy. He is that darn good. But Gruden used him to what he was. He said, we're going to scheme offensively to allow you to do the dirty work and make up those dirty, filthy, gritty yards. And they used the players that they had on the roster because Gruden recognized what you had. McDaniels came in and said, I have a scheme. Renfro, you're not part of it.
Well, plus Gruden also thought going in until the very beginning of the year that he had a true dynamic number one receiver in Antonio Brown. And of course, we all saw that fall apart.
Well, Antonio Brown is an interesting cat.
That dude's a unicorn.
Yeah, he's
CTE with severe CTE.
Yeah, like I think that he's gonna have his brain examined, and they're gonna be like, he had CTE like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And that was 15 years ago when he was still in the league, not 15 years ago when he actually dies. Right. But I actually think that he's got some major brain issues because he's got clocked in the head so many times.
Yeah, true.
And that's fair enough.
I mean, Burfitt did it to him.
Like you saw him get hit so hard in the head in primetime NFL games in the AFC North. I'm sorry, it's just a fact. But when we look at where the AFC West is and you look at the Broncos, and then we go back to what you were talking about, Russell Wilson, which is if he does well this year, then that means he did it on purpose with Hackett. Because some of the throws that he is meant to make, the long throws down the field, those things that he is known for, he wasn't doing. And that means that was a him thing, not a scheme thing. Because as a quarterback, you either throw the ball properly or you don't. Right?
Yeah. And either way, I think he's lost his locker room. Yeah, I think
that might be true, but my point is more why. So based on what premise have you lost the locker room? Have you lost the locker room because you've gotten older and because you're not owning the leadership role? Or have you lost the locker room because you did it on purpose and they know you did it on purpose?
My guess is he came in with all his, let's ride. It's not if we win, it's how many championships we win. And then everything hit the fan and it was not his fault. It was everyone around him's fault.
Yeah, he was not able to put the team on his back like I think he envisioned he could.
Well, that's fair because when you're trying to put a dude who's 6'8" on your back and you're only 5'10", you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think.
Sorry. Is that some kind of like negative comment for a short dude? I don't know.
Here's an interesting question, though.
It's a fact, right?
Would you? I guess as you guys, as Raiders, Broncos fans here, would you rather have Wilson right now with his contract money or Jimmy G at $23 million?
Jimmy G, 100%.
Can I take neither of the above?
No.
There's no option C here.
I'd
Or
have
you could
to.
have Stidham. It'd be
I'd have to.
Stidham. There
I'd
you
have
go.
to. I'd have to go with the Garoppolo contract simply because you're getting him at a bargain. You're not mortgaging your future in terms of giving away draft picks. Again, I'm not sure that Jimmy G is the answer, even if he stays healthy. But
I don't
I think he's
care if
certainly a
he's the answer
viable
at
option.
22 million.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
taking that contract every day over the Russell Wilson contract and twice on Sunday.
Right.
But-
And so
but
when you
they
look at
can
the
get out
Raiders
of it,
right
right?
now, you guys can build an offensive line. You guys can build other key position groups in your team.
And defense.
Right. Now, whether or not you do that or not is a different question. But can you do that? Yes, because you have a quarterback who's cost controlled. And so you're in a position where you can bring in a younger guy at quarterback. You can bring in a younger O lineman. You can bring in younger rookies and have them learn from a guy that's been there and done that and, basically, reels in porn stars. And says, yes.
Oh,
this
Jimmy G, I thought you were talking about me.
No. And so you got a dude that can kind of like show them the way, if you will, and not pay an arm and a leg to do so, and then bring in a young rookie that can fill in like that.
Jack, isn't that what we're paying Brian Hoyer for?
What?
Isn't he the guy who's supposed to show the way?
I have no clue what the hell you just said.
He was talking about Jimmy G showing the way. I said, isn't that why we brought in Hoyer?
Oh no, I thought no. I think that
Hoyer
was
just came
what we
in to
brought
hang out
in.
with his buddy.
No. We brought in Peter Frampton for that.
So Christopher, we had an undrafted free agent quarterback who I have been a huge fan of, and I felt was actually treated unfairly by the Broncos in Kyle Slaughter. He went to the USFL. He went to some other subsequent leagues. He actually ended up with the Vikings for a good number of years. I actually thought he had some legit potential in my mind to being an NFL quarterback who the Broncos could have developed. But again, yet another John Elway fail, let him go and move on. And that, in my mind, was a huge misstep by the Denver Broncos. We should have kept him, and he could have been the guy to backstop that Super Bowl 50 kind of slump as a potential quarterback for the team.
He did sign the XFL guy, Danucci, so.
Danucci!
Former Cowboy.
Yeah. But my point is that we had other guys that were options at the quarterback position that the Broncos, in all fairness, basically just ignored.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they really did not do anything to develop any type of answer or any type of alternate solution in case Wilson didn't work. And I think that was one of the main things, one of the main problems of the years, that once things started to go south, they had nowhere else to turn.
Right. And Christopher, I have long since called Slaughter the Slaughterhouse. That is my name. I have called him that, and you can find previous videos from previous years. That has been my nickname for him, and I've called him Slaughter as opposed to Sloter, which is his real name, because I actually thought he did such a good job when he was with our team that he deserves credit where credit was never been given due.
Well, if you would have kept Driscoll, I would have had an in because I went to school with his father.
Well, his dad might be a great guy, but not my cup of tea. My point is that when you're building a team, you have to approach it with vision. And you have to look at it in terms of a holistic view. Do you have an offensive line that can protect your quarterback? Moreover, what's your scheme that you want to run on offense? And do those offensive linemen fit that scheme Do you have depth at the offensive line in case one of those guys get injured? And then on top of that, can you develop a quarterback as well as a backup quarterback that can backfill when injuries, which are inevitable at the NFL level, can step in and do the right thing? I think we have one team in the division that has understood that vision, and it rhymes with the Queefs. And they have done a good job at doing the right things.
Hey, speaking of, I wanted to toss it over to Mr. Givens, and I want to ask you a question. So, how do you feel sitting in that Kansas City locker room and looking down on the other three teams and just kind of shaking your head and nodding your head, saying, "Okay, I'm king of the mountain, and nobody's been able to knock me off for years." How does it make you feel, going in not only as the reigning world champion, but knowing that that the other teams, even though they're making progress, are not going to catch you probably this coming year?
Short answer, pretty freaking sweet. But, I mean, well, Chiefs have had their fair share of being bad, and I think this was kind of the culmination of as Richie said, having the grand scheme once they got Reed in the building and what they wanted to build and what he wanted to do from an offensive standpoint. It just took a while to get there.
They didn't have too bad of a draft class last year either.
No, and I mean,
Brad, thank you for joining us.
Veach, the GM's been, ever since he's had kind of the keys to the kingdom, been making all the right moves and bringing in right guys. And, he's been able to get rid of key contributors and somehow not miss a step. I'm not smug enough to not realize at some point it'll come crashing down. I just hope it's not, in the immediate future, but it's hard to bet against them when you got a pairing like Mahomes and Reed, who seem to put up offensive numbers like no one has before with whoever's out there, but it'll be, I mean, they're going to have a lot of big moves coming up in the next coming years with having to find a replacement for Kelsey, moving on from Kelsey, keeping Chris Jones and what they're going to do with that. I mean, that's really the biggest hurdle for them now that they have Mahomes is what other key contributors can they keep financially and not be cap strapped. So that's the biggest challenge going ahead for them.
Yeah. Ed Winchell asked a question for the panel. He said, now that Brady is part owner, does that preclude him from playing next year? Absolutely. Absolutely. He is done. And I will make that statement now. You can mark your calendar. He is now going the ownership route. He did all he needed to do. He came back and proved he could win a championship outside of Belichick's umbrella. He did that. He came back another year. The diminishing skill set, as we see with quarterbacks, eventually Father Time wins, and this is one of the reasons why I did not want to see him come to the Raiders. He's done as a player.
I could see him stepping in as an owner coach.
No.
Can't do it.
Nope.
Why not?
Can't.
Oh, owner coach has been, well, maybe as an advisor, he will be down on the sidelines like
right
will. But as far as him being a recognized coach,
no, I don't think he's going to be a recognized coach. I think that as an owner, he has the ability to influence. Like, he can walk into the locker room and be like, "Hey, quarterback, come here."
I don't see that happening.
No, I do. And the reason why I do is because, unlike most people, Tom Brady has a true recognition of legacy. And it's what separates him, I think, from a number of other quarterbacks in the NFL. So he was able to structure his deals to ensure that the proper team was around him to facilitate his ability to supplant Joe Montana. And he was the quarterback that Tom Brady was targeting. He's admitted so.
Yeah. Well,
so now the question is, okay.
The question is that if he gets past me going out onto the field in Vegas from the players' tunnel, which is by the seats that I have, is how far and how much of a loogie can I pop on him?
And
Right.
by the way,
probably never go back.
And by the way, I want to point out that Jack is probably faster in the 40-yard dash than Brady.
Yes, even with my cane.
Right, but the point is that Brady can still dissect a defense faster than any Raiders quarterback currently on the roster.
Well,
And
I'm
so-
not going to argue that point.
And so the point is that you have that level of leadership from a football IQ perspective in the upper tier of ownership now. You would be, no offense to the Raiders fans out there who are poo-pooing on this idea, you'd be an idiot not to use it.
Well, the one thing that you keep forgetting, and I'm very glad that Chris Earl Ashley brought this up, it's kind of hard to be talking with players when you're in another city or in a studio in a broadcast realm.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's what I wasn't sure if his ownership thing would impact that either.
No, actually,
they're going to work it out.
You can't be an owner. You can't be an owner and be a broadcaster. You just have to divest yourself from games that where you would be
In conflict.
In conflict, yeah.
Which means
you have to recuse yourself from speaking at such things.
He probably will not do any Raiders games and probably not any AFC West games, to be honest with you.
But there's so many games to then choose from a guy like him that he could double dip.
Well, you got to have somebody bring life to a Titans versus Jacksonville Jaguars matchup.
Well, both of those teams are on the up and up, so I'm happy for someone to basically portray Tony Romo with his predictions as a secondary player who's got the ability.
Romo doesn't even do that anymore.
He doesn't. He's curtailed that now. But so with regards to the Raiders, let's just leverage Tom while he's still here before he has to leave us to go to bed because he has a very important job that he has to wake up to very early
We've got to get those aircraft out of the airport very early in the morning. Yes.
Yes. So, Captain and Tom, of your rookies in this season, who do you think is going to shine for the Raiders?
Tom, I got mine. You do yours first, and I'll tell you if it's the same one I got.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna kind of pivot a little bit here. He is not technically a rookie, but I think our
Nope. Save that because we got second-year players.
Okay, yeah, second-year players. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the defensive back Jacorian Bennett is actually going to make strides, and again, people would say other people like Christopher Smith, but I think Jacorian Bennett is going to come into training camp and really make an impact and secure one of those cornerback spots. And coming out of nowhere, I know people would say Mayer, and that people would say Tyree Wilson. I think they're all going to have great years, but I think the guy who's going to surprise people the most and make the biggest leap, particularly during training camp and going into the season, and securing one of those cornerback spots is going to be Jacorian Bennett.
Okay, and I would say that I think that he has a very good chance of being the starter, if not immediately, by I would say the first quarter of the season going. So what's about 4 games in. If he's not a starter by game 4 or 5, I think that will eventually take place. And Chris was talking about Merrick. Merrick's actually on year 3, Chris.
Yeah.
So that was the one thing on that. He had his 2 years, and this is his 3rd year. So we're not going to account for him. But
I'll be honest with you. I think Merrick is going to have to battle to make the roster.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. On thanks for that on Swell Time. I would say that the guys, and I'm going to say this: both of our offensive linemen from last year in Parham as well as Mumford offensively, as the second-year players are going to make the biggest impact for second-year players offensively. And defensively, I really think that one of the defensive tackles that we picked up in the draft, either Butler or Farrell, as well as Masterson at linebacker, are going to make the biggest impact that way as far as those players. I would say it might have been Webb, but I'm not sure if Webb's going to get enough snaps. And those for the second-year players. As far as the rookies, I like Bennett being mentioned, but I really think that because he was brought in so high in a position of need, Mayer is going to be that outstanding rookie. And I think Wilson is going to be brought in little by little, and he will be ascending by the end of the year because I think that Chandler Jones will have a fire under his ass. Wilson will get a lot of snaps, but he won't be a primary defensive rush specialist until the end of the year. So I think Mayer is probably going to be that rookie right off the bat that makes the most of his time.
Yeah, and I think that the defensive front, I'm going to mention three names. Bilal Nichols, Tillery. Yes, I mentioned it, Tillery. So Nichols, Tillery, and Farrell, I think, are going to be your three stalwarts in the middle. Oh, and Jack, I was going to mention your second year player, your comeback player, or your breakout player, I guess, is going to be our second year 4th round pick, running back Zamir White. I think this is the year where he starts to get more carries.
Zeus?
Yeah, Zeus. I think he's going to get a lot more carries, either because they just go ahead and pass the baton, knowing that Josh is not going to come back, or Josh gets injured like he has been prone to do. I think that we're really going to see Zamir White break out, just like I think you're going to see running back Isaiah Spiller, the 4th round pick by the Chargers, break out and take the place of Austin Eckler this year. So I think you're looking at two running backs from the Western Division that are second year players who are both going to have breakout years.
Think we'll be quite well there, and I actually agree with Tom's breakout as far as wins and losses for the Raiders. Like I said, I think, and I've said this before, and again, I know that this is May, and what was it? The Charger Chris was saying, yeah, this is May. I get it. But
speculation in May, it's the best.
I really say that the Raiders are going to win between 7 and 10 if all goes well. If they get key injuries, you can throw that out the window. But if Jimmy G stays healthy and the defense plays modicum better, they will definitely improve upon their record. They were 6-11 last year. They will improve on that record. The improvement factor is going to be mitigated by the fact that they play in the toughest division in football. So 7 to 10 wins is where the Raiders will pan out. Okay. Could be the 9-8, 8-9, which is about where, Tom has us. But, and I'm not smoking anything. I'm trying to do things analytically as well. We're not that team yet. And as Richie said, it takes all of us. And Tom's going to play the Charger guy right now because he's in that corner and coach isn't here. It takes all of us to put our teams together to knock off that guy down there.
Unfortunately, I'm wearing blue as well. So,
I said I was going to mention that. Thank you for the obvious thing. Is that because you're wearing your blue today, you're representing Coach in the Chargers, but it's going to take all of our efforts in order to knock off the Chiefs. It might not be this year, but I firmly believe that it will be another year that the Chiefs they'll get the record with 8 consecutive AFC West. Pending, some debilitating injuries. You can never account for injuries. But all things being equal, Chargers, this will be the last of the line. I think that next year there will be a new a new champion in the AFC West for 2024.
Enjoy your reign, REIN, because after that comes the rain, RAIN.
Oh, I know. So I'm eating it up, man.
All right, listen, guys, it's been a pleasure joining you. I'm looking forward to getting back on with you again, but at this point, I'm gonna have to back out. Sleep awaits, but if you talk to Coach, wish him my best. Again, I know that this online thievery is no joke. I urge everybody to go out and get whatever protections you can. Just be careful online and be careful with everything. Guard your identity and guard everything. Keep a regular watch on it, because unfortunately the other half is out there.
I agree.
All right.
And Tom, thank you for joining us today. I love your insight into the objective assessment of the AFC West. Look forward to seeing you again. Reach out. We'll see you soon.
Been my pleasure. Thanks, guys. You have a great evening, and all of you who are tuned in, you all have a wonderful evening as well.
And be sure to hit up the T3 if you're a Raider person. Hit up T3 at the broadcast. Tom, please pimp that.
Yeah, one pimp it. There we go. In Jimmy G fashion. So,
how much? Money.
You can find us on the Only Nation podcast, onlynationpodcast.com, or if you're a fan of history, and I've challenged all the guys here on the panel to go back and check these episodes out. If you will search on your favorite podcast provider, Raider Roots. This it's 70 episodes, which goes all the way back to the beginning of the AFL. And it talks about AFL history, Raiders history year by year. It talks about the behind the scenes as well as on the field performances. It's just a really good walk through history. So again, I encourage you to check out both. You can check me out and give me a comment on Twitter. I'm at T3_sports703. And thank you all once again for giving me the opportunity to come on tonight.
I'll have a shower, Tom.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
See you, Tom.
Have a good one. So I think there's a super interesting piece here in terms of where we think we're all going to go, which is I think we collectively agree that the Chiefs are the team to beat. Alex, I'd love to hear, and I think the audience would love to hear, what do you think are going to be the keys for you guys to maintain that? And just give me 1 second. I'm going to be coming back on camera.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the keys to sustain that would obviously be keep the offensive production, at the same level it's been really since Mahomes has been QB. I mean, as long as they keep putting up the points that they do and score, at the pace that they do, I mean, they're going to be hard to beat. That's kind of how the roster's built, is to, a track meet. We're just going to outscore everyone. And I think as soon as you see a dip in their offensive production numbers, like points per game, yards per game, first downs per game, once you kind of see those be drastically lower than what they have been the past few years, that's when the alarms would start to go off, because you're not going to see them putting up the points that they have. I mean, they've always given up points, so that would mean that they're not outscoring their opponents. And as John Madden would say, that's the ultimate key to the game. And, you're going to have a bad time. So, I mean, really, and keeping Mahomes healthy is obviously priority one, which they have been doing by investing heavy in offensive line and ensuring that they keep that talent level, relatively the same with, especially with losing Orlando Brown and bringing in Juwan Taylor and seeing what happens, with right tackle. But, like Jack said, as long as Mahomes is healthy and Andy Reid's the coach, it's going to be hard to bet against them. And if they ever get a top 10 defense, then it's going to be even worse. Let's see, what if it was Hardman and Hill gone? Who do you think? Yeah, Chris. So, and Captain could tell me this is going to be a stupid approach, but everything I've seen up to this point is that they love Kadarius Toney and think that they can really move into this season with him kind of stepping into that Tyreek Hill role and eating up more targets and kind of being the wide receiver one, which, I mean, obviously the talent's there. He can't stay on the field. And I mean, it's unfortunate, but there's just guys that doesn't matter what happens. They're going to make a hell of a play and then be hurt after that. But I think that's also
Tony's
why
biggest foe is himself, or the fact that he can't stay healthy. Also, Tony's biggest problem is that his ego is so big that they can't find a helmet big enough to fit his head in. So. If he would come back down to earth and hopefully with the tutelage of a veteran team in Kansas City, they'll have somebody to knock him around to deflate that ego, because he can be that dynamic of a player. He was better than Percy Harvin at Florida. He was more dynamic than even Percy Harvin. Yeah, but
same with Percy Harvin. Percy Harvin got hurt too.
Right. Well, Percy Harvin had his migraines, and Tony just had a bunch of other ailments.
Yeah, but I mean, everything that has been put out is that's kind of the approach going into it. Tony's, one, still have Valdez Scantling, have Sky Moore, who I said earlier I think is poised to step into a bigger role. The only thing, with Sky Moore is he's small like Tyreek Hill, but he's not fast like Tyreek Hill, and he can't change direction or cut at the speed that Tyreek Hill or really even McCole Hardman could. But even McCole was not at Tyreek's level. And then you also got this Rashid Rice that they took out of SMU, who was Mahomes' number one target he wanted. And I mean, watch the highlights of him. You can see why Mahomes would want him, because he will go get the ball and he finds the soft spot in zone. So it'll be exciting to see how he works into it. But I mean, they got a lot of promising options. I just am ear to the side of caution with Tony being the, next Tyreek Hill, just with his injury history. But, I think that he could step in and put up some of the same production you see Tyreek did. I just don't, I don't know if he can stay around to do that for a whole season. You're on mute, Rich.
Tyreek is a special player.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyreek is a guy that by NFL standards had no business learning how to run routes. Right?
Yeah.
Look at the holistic bigger picture, right? A guy that's that fast typically says, I'm just faster than you. I don't need to learn how to actually play. Like, I'm just quick.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
I'm just
early
fast.
on,
I'm just fast, right?
He didn't run routes. He just outran everyone.
Yeah.
Early on.
Yeah. But what you ended up with Tyreek ultimately is the fact that he said, no, I'm going to learn how to run a route tree.
Yeah. He will. I will say, though, I mean, Andy Reid and his staff obviously he had some untapped potential that he was just born with, but I mean, they did develop him into that. He wasn't a wide receiver coming out of college. He was, in fact, his rookie year, I think he had more touches than catches, but obviously he is a one of a kind unicorn type athlete that it just perfectly worked out with how they developed him. And they tried to do a similar thing with Hardman, and that never kind of came to fruition. And now, he's not even there.
Tyreek Hill's nickname is the Cheetah, and that was given to him.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not denying. Yeah, he's not,
it's just ridiculous.
Tyreek Hill is what I hope Dante Hall was when I was a kid. I thought Dante Hall was going to be Tyreek Hill, but all he could do was run kicks and punts back.
Right, and so the thing is that Hill did the things that most guys of his skill set just say, I don't need to.
Yeah, literally, it was just Mahomes. I think his first year, it was kind of just like, oh, no one's open. F it, Tyreek's down there. which isn't a bad problem to have. And I mean, you kind of saw the same when he went to Miami. Tua was like, oh, F it, Tyreek or Jalen Waddle, somewhere down there. And I mean, that's just, he went to a worse QB and put up the same numbers, if not better. So,
right,
you know,
I actually think that was because of a combination. Well, first off, I think that Mahomes' first year was like, I'm not sure I can outthrow Tyreek. And it seemed to be like a challenge for him, which was just funny. Like, can I throw the ball further than Tyreek can run?
Yeah.
I was like, you know, this is fun. You know, it's like backyard football, right? You know, like everyone knows that fast dude that you grew up with, and you're like, can I outthrow him? Like, can I outthrow him in the run? And Tyreek was that guy. But then the question was, okay, well, I have a Tyreek Hill, but then Hill was like, okay, I need to learn to be better because I have kids and expenses and other things. I need to get longevity for my career. And I think credit needs to be given to Tyreek Hill for that vision in terms of saying at some point my speed is not going to be as fast and I need to do better. And like, I truly think that he has the legit option of being like a 15 to 30 year wide receiver in the NFL. Like, when you're starting as the fastest wide receiver that the NFL has ever seen, basically, you have a long way to go down to get to the average dude.
Yeah, but that's a lot of hits to take.
No, I don't disagree, but you know, some guys are just that stubborn, right? And so the one thing that Tyreek has done that other guys haven't is he valued the route tree super early in his career. So he's within the first 3 years of his career and said, I'm not only faster than you, but I'm going to learn how to run a route tree.
Yeah.
Like, that is dangerous.
I mean, against the Bills, in that 13 seconds, he took a slant route, 90 yards. And then,
dude, that is dangerous.
3 dudes in the league
that's dangerous. You know? That is not right. When you have a guy that's like, I am a 4-2 guy, sort of.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make you look like a fool. Right? And you can't defend that.
No, you really can't.
And so he basically said, okay, I'm going to learn how to play the wide receiver position at my top end of my, like, I am at my apex, and I'm going to learn all of the things that no one else ever bothers doing. And like, there are so few guys that are like him that you could see him being a Jerry Rice easy. Now, you can also agree that he might be a trash human being.
Yeah.
Right? But that doesn't mean he's not an absolute outstanding football player.
Most,
right? Like the two are not the same thing.
Most trash human beings are.
Like A is not B, right? So it's
look at OJ.
Look at OJ Simpson. Exactly. He's like one of the best running backs ever, but he's also a trash human being, right? So one of those really interesting things where as a football fan, you have to juxtapose your Greg Hardys and Tyreek Hills against your Peyton Mannings and other guys that are upstanding citizens, right? And it's just a fact.
Yeah. Greg Hardy, I forgot about that guy.
Well, if you're going to go there, how about Ray Caruth?
Right.
Well, he's out of jail, actually.
Yeah, or Hernandez, who was so awful he had to kill himself.
Right. And so like there's guys that are in those positions that are I mean, let's be honest, guys. Hernandez was a spectacular football player.
Yeah.
Like Like,
he was a hell of a tight end.
I'm sorry, but I'm
yeah.
not sorry for saying that he was an amazing football player. He was like upper tier of the tight end position.
Yeah.
He was a trash human being. And the two don't always equate with one another, and then that's a difficult spot as a football fan to put yourself in, right?
There's the best. There was I can't remember, some dude on the Titans, I think. But after all the Hernandez stuff came out, he posted a photo of like him standing over Hernandez, and he's like, now that all this is broke, I look back on this when I told him like he could see me anytime, and he said he'll effing kill me, and now I know he actually meant it.
Yeah, exactly. No, but that's the thing, right? Is that like you can have a guy who's super good at what they do,
and he was Tim Tebow's tight end,
right? Like Tim Tebow literally kneeled on the sideline and prayed to Jesus every day,
and his top target was gang banging on the streets.
Yeah, exactly. So, like the whole point is that you can have a guy who is not like the other, but on a football field, all things are equal.
Yeah.
Like skill set and talent is all leveled. Right.
But Tyreek can have all the skills and be the highest paid running or wide receiver, but he's got one less Super Bowl ring than Mahomes and Kelsey do.
No, but you can also look at the off the field problems, right? Where you have a guy who's got a checkered past or a shady upbringing or moral.
Well, and that's why they drafted Hardman. Actually, was because at the time of that draft, there was a potential that Tyreek was going to get a pretty hefty suspension for some I think it was something like child abuse issues or something that ended up he didn't get charged with anything. So I mean, obviously, that's the end of that from a legal standpoint, but the optics of that are still there. But I mean, that's why Hardman. That's why I believe they drafted him as a potential similar player that could replace that if he wasn't there. And then he wasn't suspended, and he kind of just fell to the wayside. But I mean so he had those issues. Hardman's rookie year, so 3-4 years ago.
No, I agree, and this is like, so for example, this is one of the NFL's biggest challenges, right? Which is, okay, you have really talented players. Like legit talented players. Tyreek Hill, Greg Hardy, and all these other guys, like Aaron Hernandez, who are, Aaron Hernandez literally had a checkered past and was known to be a gangbanger. Like as in like in a gang carrying weaponry, like the whole nine, right?
Yeah.
But the whole nine, no pun intended.
Exactly. But on the football field, they're all
you got to catch the football.
Yeah, like can you catch or play, right? And this has really always been the NFL's conundrum, which is like you're a trash human being. Like anyone would never trust their kids within 20 feet of you, right? Like they just wouldn't, like never ever. But God damn, you could play football. It's one of those things where it's like where's the sliding scale here? And that's always been the challenge, which is it product or character? And there's always going to be fans that land in different spots. And I completely
that's why they put so much emphasis on the Peyton Mannings of the world, and those guys kind of become the face of the league, and even when they're done, Like the Manning, like what other set of brothers, that haven't played in 5 years are like still so involved in the league,
100%. And like, so look at Manning, look at Brady, look at some of the other iconic, guys at the NFL level. There's a reason why they're iconic. And Alex, as much as it hurts me deeply to admit it, Patrick Mahomes seems to have overcome what could have been something negative. His brother is hot garbage.
Well, yeah.
Like his brother deserves a smack upside the head and maybe more, right?
Actually, his brother would have to improve to be hot garbage.
Yeah, I agree. But when you look at Mahomes, like Patrick, not the idiot brother, but you look at Patrick, he seems to be above the fray. He seems to understand the responsibility that his position comes with.
Mm-hmm.
Almost the Spider-Man meme, right? Which is, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, he actually gave a pretty professional answer about the whole situation with his brother today. But I mean, he's a pro's pro, but you kind of knew that when he was in a locker room, at a young age, because his dad was in
100%,
MLB.
100%. But what
It's
that
similar
shows,
with Peyton Manning, though, right? Like their dad was in the NFL, so it's like you get these kids that are exposed to that world and what goes into it from a very early age.
right? But you can end up with an A and B, right? Yeah. So you look at Patrick's brother, who is an entitled bastard.
Yeah.
Right? He's a guy that just thinks that he's owed everything in the world. And you have Patrick Mahomes, who by all accounts is a humble person. He's a guy that kind of understands that his platform means that he has to do better. And
yeah, I'm watching Cliff Branch highlights because I wasn't really sure who that was. So,
but my whole point is that when you look at a guy like Mahomes and his brother, so you look at Jackson and Patrick, right? You have two guys that grew up in the same house. You have Patrick, who was basically clearly taught to say something to the effect of, you have the potential to do amazing, but you have to understand that people are going to look up to you. And you have Jackson Mahomes, who basically grew up with the fact of saying, well, I'm owed everything. So therefore, you must respect me. And that is such a trash, awful, like,
that's not how that works.
Like that's not how things work in life. Like, good luck, buddy. Right?
Yeah.
And
well, you see where he's at now. So
right. And so now you have one brother who is at the apex of their career, and then the other brother who is about to go to jail. Right?
Yeah.
And if that doesn't say why parenting and values and other things matter, I don't know what does. Like I truly don't. Right? So, and you have and other NFL players who have gone through similar things that are equally as important. Right? So, but when we circle back to our teams and we look at our core players, I think this is really important. The guys that are UDFAs have those core values like entrenched in them.
Yeah.
They have those values of, I need to do better, as part of their core values. And I think the Broncos have a guy like Seth Benson, who's at the inside linebacker position, who's going to be a guy that Broncos fans are going to say, where did he come from? I think the Broncos are going to have a few other guys, from the wide receiver spot, like a Marsh. Was it? I got to look up his name again real quick. He was injured last year. Let me just quickly look up the roster.
Aren't
Cliff
you only
Branch was
supposed
pretty
to have
fast.
one or two of them on your roster per year? You know, great receivers who get injured that can't help you out.
They're like the Broncos seem to always have a few key
Right,
injuries.
you got a quota of at least one. It was KJ Hamler, and then last year it was Hamler plus another guy, and Patrick was one as well.
Brandon Johnson is the guy I'm talking about. He was a guy that showed out in preseason who was literally on track to being a surefire 90-man roster guy who ended up getting thrown on IR as a result of an injury. But the Broncos have an eye for UDFA talent, guys that are going to be back end of the roster that are way better than back end of the roster. Like, you know, the guys that are at like spot 89 that are more like spot 50 or 30. And the Broncos have always done well with that. Philip Lindsay is a good example. You know, the running back rather for the Denver Broncos, who we let go after year 3. That's a great example of a guy who really ought to be given a proper chance by leveraging skill sets versus, you know, who you have. But anyways, guys, if you have any questions with regards to the AFC West, who you think is going to, you know, show out next season, who you would like to see us cover in terms of specific players, reach out to us via Twitter. Reach out to us via the comments down below in the comment section. We will do our level best to respond to you. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a history, like a very long list of fantastic show topics to bring to you each and every week. We will see you next week on the AFC West podcast here on the Wild Wild West. And until next week, where the West side is the best side, we will see you next Wednesday. Peace!
You're dumb!
Feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.